Welcome into the Hard Count, the People's College Football Show. It is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, last one on the face of the planet. It's a massive day now, right? We're not going to dance around it. It is a huge day for all of us because tonight, the first ever college football playoff rankings in the 12-team era will be revealed. I know it's been on your mind for a while now. It's probably been stressing you out. A lot of emotion, a lot of debate tonight about the rankings. Regardless, though, we got some games to break down, some predictions to make. Now, I want to make sure I mention this. Make sure you are subscribed here to the On3 YouTube channel because tonight, when those rankings do come out, we will have a video for you shortly thereafter with our reaction to the rankings. I believe Andy and Ari will be live on this very platform giving you their reaction in real time. So bottom line, there's nothing else going on tonight, so just get dialed in over here to everything going on with those rankings and with our reaction to those rankings, because I have to believe there will be a fair amount of discussion to be had. Quick sidebar, we were told the 12-team playoff would amount to less debate, would amount to, more fairness, if you will. I'm just telling you right now, whoever is sitting there at 13 and 14, they're going to feel like they should have a case to be in that 12-team playoff. And they may very well have a case. But I'm just saying, do not think for 1 second that we're going to get to Selection Sunday and we're all going to agree on the top 12 and it's all going to be nice and neat. No, as long as there is a committee, as long as there is opinions and decisions being made around those opinions, we are going to have a lot of discussion. So, again, with that being said, make sure you're subscribed right here. Massive Week 11 slate, man. Massive Week 11 slate. A lot has changed about this sport. Alabama, LSU hasn't changed. Crimson Tide rolling into Death Valley at night, much to the chagrin of one Lane Kiffin. But regardless, we'll break that one down, give you our winner there. We arrived at our winner in that game a matter of minutes before this show went live, so should tell you how we feel about it. Georgia, Ole Miss. Georgia rolling into Oxford now. Remember the game last year being played in Athens. There was a lot of conversation around, well, hey, can Ole Miss hold a candle to Georgia? Like, we don't know where Georgia's at right now and their perimeter run defense. All those things were said. And then after the game, after Georgia took belt to behind against Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin took the podium and said Georgia is better than us right now because of the caliber of players they have. Well, you look at what they did in the portal this offseason with Ole Miss and company, and they upped their level of caliber of play, or of caliber of player, if you will, especially on the defensive line. Are they up to par now to be able to take down Georgia? About to find out. Also, Colorado and Texas Tech. This is a game now that sort of unexpectedly is a pretty massive stage. I believe Big Noon Kickoff will be there. I know Big Noon Kickoff's going to be there. I'm not sure if that's the Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson game. You would assume so, but we'll see what happens there. That's a massive one. I mean, the Pac-12 and the chaos that the Pac-12 is walked so the Big 12 could run this year with the just wild scenarios we have here down the stretch there. Colorado, their college football playoff hopes are still intact, and we're in the month of November. Let that sink in for a second. Texas Tech, they need some help as well, but their Big 12 title hopes are still intact. And by that logic, their college football playoff hopes are still intact. So we'll give you our pick in that one in Lubbock. Should be phenomenal. Miami, looking to stay unbeaten against Georgia Tech. If you've watched this show for any length of time, you know we have been puzzled by Miami a little bit just because Miami has really not played a full four-quarter football game since the game against Florida to start the year, in my estimation at least. Does that change this weekend? Remains to be seen. And then a game that should be a top 25 matchup to round out the show, South Carolina rolling into Nashville to play Vanderbilt. Put South Carolina up against, I would venture to say, anyone from 21 to 25 in those college football, I guess not college football playoff rankings. We'll find out about those tonight. But the AP poll, feel good about South Carolina. Feel like what they did against A&M should hold a little bit more weight. I digress. We'll break that one down and have a good time doing it. And then also want to give you my thoughts on the USC quarterback situation because some news broke around that today. Lincoln Riley going with Jaden Mayava, the transfer from UNLV now, and Miller Moss going to be holding a clipboard, it sounds like, for the foreseeable future. Again, make sure you're dialed in. It's college football, nothing but college football on this show. We get to talk about it year-round. We get to do so because y'all are dialed in, because y'all are subscribed, so we appreciate you in advance for that. All right, checking the phone. Wife is not calling. She's not in labor. Baby girl is not yet here. So let's pick some games. Let's start with Alabama going to LSU, 7:30 Eastern, ABC, Death Valley. I said this at the top of the live show. I want to say it again, though, so we get this in our game prediction video. A lot has changed about college football. Conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL. Some of it you love, some of it you could do without. One thing that hasn't changed, though, is that Alabama going to LSU will be cinematic. It'll be college football poetry. For those 4 quarters now, it does not matter who portaled in, who portaled out. It doesn't matter what X, Y, and Z guy is getting paid or all. Like it is going to be all about this game, this atmosphere, and these intense fan bases. Now, the words elimination game has been appropriately given to this matchup because that's what it is. I mean, we're not going to act like it's not. It definitely has a massive, massive college football playoff implication going on with this game. The loser, you'd have to believe at 9-3, you're not making the college football playoff if you were to win out after losing this game. Probably not happening. But I want to make sure we say this too. This game, to both those fan bases, it meant something before the college football playoff had 12 teams. It meant something before the BCS era. Like Alabama, LSU, while these stakes being factored into it will obviously turn up the volume at certain points throughout this game and definitely turn up the volume for whoever loses this game. But make no mistake, like this game is impactful and tremendous outside of any college football playoff additives you want to put to it, just so we're on the same page there. Now, I want to make sure y'all know, before we get into our prediction, the hard count brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Code hard count, $5 in lineups when you play. Got a square for you a little bit later in this game. $50 in promo funds. Y'all have been using that code. We appreciate you for doing that. Just a great way to maximize your college football Saturday. While you're doing that, also make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. So let's get to business here. Alabama, it's kind of funny the narrative around them, the way it's evolved throughout the course of this season. Because after Georgia, and they, really should have beat Georgia by a lot more than what they ended up beating them by. Kind of took their foot off the gas, or not took their foot off the gas. Georgia accelerated quite a bit and was able to make that game very, very close. But Alabama, after that Georgia game, we're saying, hey, they're the best team in college football. Who's beating Bama when they're operating offensively at that level? If they're able to confuse Carson Beck, like how good could that defense be? And then things evolve throughout the course of the season. You lose to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt also a lot better than folks would give credit for, neither here nor there. Play close to South Carolina. You lose at Tennessee. And now the conversation around Alabama, I would say, has gotten borderline disrespectful. Nick Saban's not there anymore. Is Bama still Bama? Like, is Bama still Nick Saban's Alabama? We're going to find out here as the year progresses. But what I would say is there's still a whole lot of talent on this team. And I do think what they did against Georgia deserves a little bit of extra attention based on how we've talked about them the rest of the season. Like, Tennessee is a really freaking good defense. They are number 1 in America in terms of yards per play allowed, I believe, or at least yards per carry allowed. Bottom line, nearly number 1 or top 5 in every statistical category. So if you want to dunk on Bama, I would make sure we use the right context around their opponent, just so we're all on the same page there. Is it Nick Saban's Bama? I don't know. But I would say that if they're able to beat LSU, speaking of that college football playoff ticket they could punch, Mercer at Oklahoma, Auburn, all games that you would imagine they should win. I believe they would win should they find a way to get it done in Death Valley. Easier said than done. Now for LSU, I think the stakes are kind of interesting outside of the college football playoff because with the changing of the guard in Tuscaloosa, with Kalen DeBoer now being the head coach, and Brian Kelly being 1-1 during his time at LSU against Alabama, 1 win over Nick Saban, just so we're all clear here. I think if they were to beat Alabama this season, there is the potential now for the optics to reshuffle a little bit in the SEC in terms of where you view LSU to the top of the SEC and also relative to Alabama. Because make no mistake now, LSU and Bama, they're going to go toe-to-toe after the season ends on the recruiting trail for a lot of these guys, or I guess as we move forward in the National Signing Day, that's going to be a massive thing to watch for both these schools. At least optically, if you beat Alabama and Brian Kelly can take the 2-1 label with him on the recruiting trail against Bama, I think that would mean something. I think that would only bolster their efforts, and I think that LSU honestly could kind of view themselves, quite frankly, in a different light as it pertains to how they stack up to Alabama, all right? Now, for LSU in this game, I expect them to be in attack mode from the jump. Like, I'm talking spraying the ball all around the yard. I'm talking missile launching. Like, we've talked about LSU in the context of, well, okay, they want to run to set up the pass. Maybe that's true, but I think you look at Alabama's secondary and you look at how they like to play. Alabama likes to tell you before the game and how they match up during the game, we like our guys more than your guys. We're playing man coverage. Your move. If I'm LSU, I'm saying great. Awesome, because what you've shown throughout the course of this season, if you're Alabama, is that you have struggled at different times in man coverage. You watch the Tennessee game in different spots specifically throughout that game. I wouldn't look at the stat line. I'd look at the situations where Chris Brazzell gets a touchdown to ultimately win the football game. Deep shot to Dante Thornton. And that's a quarterback in Nico Iamaleava, tons of ability now. But I think Garrett Nussmeier is probably a little bit further along as a college quarterback than Nico Iamaleava. Lawrence Sellers, he was able to get rolling a little bit against Alabama. So I think there's a lot of area of opportunity if Alabama wants to stay in man coverage. And it's also worth noting here, I don't think that Alabama has played a receiving core the caliber of LSU to this point in the season. Like Aaron Anderson is a guy that I'm watching here very closely. They love him on third down. They love to isolate him in the slot. And then also Kyron Lacey. I mean, I think I mentioned him already, but like when he gets a matchup one-on-one, even if he's not visibly open, like a 50-50 ball for Kyron Lacey is not 50-50. It's 80-20. And Garrett Nussmeier knows that. He needs to clean up the mistakes if they want to have a chance to win the football game. Like Garrett Nussmeier has got to avoid what happened against A&M. To refresh your memory, he comes out firing. Vibes are immaculate for the folks in Baton Rouge watching the game going on in College Station. And then as the game progresses now, whether you want to blame Garrett Nussmeier for getting greedy, whether you want to give credit for A&M for being a little bit more exotic and applying pressure, like Garrett Nussmeier started to fumble the bag a little bit, for lack of a better phrase. Can't happen in this game, especially not at the crib, especially not with Alabama and how they're able to roll once they get some momentum. Now, I mentioned the coming out swinging kind of approach here for LSU because that is going to dictate the game flow. If LSU is able to have success downfield early, able to generate some points, let's say you're watching at home and it's, call it 14-3 LSU. At that point in time now, that's going to favor LSU, not just because they're ahead, but because that forces Alabama now to start to press a little bit more. Now, Kalen DeBoer, his background is more of the, I don't know if air raid is the right way to put it, but he wants to throw the football, historically. That's what he's done. However, with Jalen Milroe now, they've had to tailor the offense a little bit more to his skill set. Nothing wrong with that. That's what good coaches do. But if you have to throw to beat LSU to get back into the game, much less, I'm imagining if you're up in your LSU, Death Valley is probably rocking. Like that doesn't favor Alabama. Now, if you can have some success early against the pass, let's say maybe you don't play man coverage or you win your man coverage matchups, however you want to look at it, if you're Alabama, at that point in time, the game becomes, I don't know if low scoring is the word, but you probably feel like it's going towards a game played in the mid to high 20s. In that situation, that favors Bama in the inverse way of what I just spoke to. Alabama gets to run their offense. Jalen Milroe doesn't have to press quite as much and feel like they got to go chase points. They can run the football a little bit more. That is the formula for Alabama. And to be honest now, with it being in Death Valley, I wouldn't be surprised if they have to weather the storm a little bit here. I wouldn't be surprised if LSU came out swinging like I just spoke to and they have to kind of sit tight, hunker down. Maybe it is a quick score early on that first drive and Joe Sloan dials it up. Don't panic. Stay in your lane. Do what you do. Run the football. And avoid things getting out of hand is what I would say. Now, for Alabama, as much as you don't ask Jalen Milroe to go chase points, you do put a lot on his plate in this football game. All right, for a couple of reasons. One, he's your best player in the biggest game of your season at this point in time. We spoke to how much this game means, period, with these two schools and these two logos. That's clear. But like we spoke to already, college football playoff implications, you lose, you're not competing for a national championship, much less an SEC title, which is already a little bit more off in the distance than it was probably a few weeks ago. That's the first part. Best player, biggest spot. The other part of this, if you look at LSU throughout the course of this season, they have not been, what's the right word? They've been all right at defending the mobile quarterback. When you look at what they did against Taylor Green in Arkansas, they've also shown some areas where they looked very, very gettable. Like I've said this before, if Lenoris Sellers stays in the game against LSU, I think South Carolina wins that football game because he was having a lot of success on the ground, especially in those option looks. Food for thought. Also, Marcel Reed, when he subbed into the game. Now, LSU didn't get a chance to really prep for him, or they didn't prep well for him at least, but you saw very, very obviously, LSU struggled defending Marcel Reed. Now, why did they have success, in my opinion at least, defending Taylor Green of Arkansas, another mobile quarterback? I think LSU did a great job in that scenario just cutting it loose defensively. Like, that's who Blake Baker wants to be. And when I say cut it loose, I'm not talking about reckless abandon. We're leaving guys open downfield. We're busting coverages just in the effort to go chase the football. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is you turn up the pressure and you don't try and cast a wide net and just sort of react to that mobile quarterback. You go after him. You say, all right, Weeks, go get him, baby. Go hunt. Let's go. Hey, off the edge, we're coming for you. Swinson, like things of that nature is, I think, how you have to attack Jalen Milroe in Alabama. So now, with no surprise of, well, Marcel Reed gets subbed in or anything like that for LSU in this spot, I'm curious if the experience now that they've had against mobile quarterbacks, I'm curious if that doesn't play in their favor in a very interesting and potentially massive sense. Now, the key here for me with LSU, defending Jalen Milroe and what he does on the ground. I think you have to meet speed with speed. That's 100% true. I think that's how you defend Alabama, with them going east to west so much, with attacking the perimeter and the bubble screens and the speed sweeps with Law and all those things. Definitely true. However, I think you still have to be honest up front in that front seven in how you stop the run. Because if you got to add in a safety, or we got to get a little bit too, I don't want to say cute, but maybe a little bit too exotic with how we defend the run, and we got to add extra numbers up from the second and third level. At that point, what are we doing? Yeah, we're trying to stop the run. Maybe we have more success stopping Jalen Milroe on a specific play, but it leaves us exposed to Ryan Williams down the field, to Jeremy Bernard getting loose over the seam, to the tight ends getting involved. Like, I don't think you want to totally dismiss your resources in the secondary in the effort to try and stop Jalen Milroe. I think that's a losing effort because of how explosive Alabama has shown they can be offensively. So I really do think it is on that linebacking core of LSU. Can you, with speed, handle Jalen Milroe and handle that perimeter run game? If you can, I think vibes will be very good in Baton Rouge. So I mentioned we had a prize pick square for you. I'm going to take Kyron Lacey and his receiving yard total. I already spoke to the Alabama secondary and the way they make me nervous. 70.5 receiving yards for Kyron Lacey. We'll take the more there. Again, code hard count, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds. So what's the pick here, right? That's what we're all here for. What's the prediction? My gut really does say Alabama. It does, because of Jalen Milroe, because of just the what-if factor with him. We've seen him take over games. We've seen this, like I said, Alabama's defense be opportunistic. We've seen this front seven be awesome. But I keep going back to a couple of things. One, I'd be wildly surprised if Garrett Nussmeier played as poorly as he did for the duration of the game against A&M as he does at home against Alabama. I don't think you'll see that second half implosion. I think you'll see a lot of good Garrett Nussmeier. I also keep going back to the fact that we picked against LSU at night when Ole Miss came to town. And I'll say this, Brian Kelly is undefeated at night in Death Valley. So, in some way here, I guess you could say we are fading our gut. We're going to go with LSU to win. By that logic, them being the home underdog, we're taking LSU to cover. So, Death Valley at night, Brian Kelly stays undefeated. And I think that LSU answers the call to action, and I think they show they are a mature football team, and they bounce back from the poor showing against A&M, and they get back right with a win at home over Bama. All right. How about that? How about that to get us started? Thanks for everyone dialed in live. Make sure you have liked the video. Got a lot more predictions to get to here. Going to talk about USC's quarterback situation in just a little bit. But let's touch on this here because this is another big one in the SEC. You got Georgia going to Ole Miss this time. 3:30 Eastern, ABC. Ole Miss, man, everyone was saying going into the season, yourself included, or yours truly included rather, that this was the year for a national splash. And it still could be. Now you've made it a little bit difficult on yourself with the losses to Kentucky and the loss to Ole Miss, but still, I think 10-2 Ole Miss with a win over Georgia would get you in the college football playoff, but remains to be seen. Got to get it done first. Lane Kiffin said something at his press conference this week that I thought was right on the money. Speaking to their college football playoff path, speaking to what they want to accomplish, he's like, if you want to do anything in the postseason or in the SEC, it still goes through Georgia. Like Lane Kiffin isn't, somehow kidding himself that they can, somehow get around these powers in the SEC, and that's not what Lane Kiffin's looking for either. Like he came to Ole Miss to make Ole Miss a power. It's a big reason why they did what they did in the portal this past cycle. Like they went and got some big boys up front to try and match up with the Georgias, with the Bamas, with the LSUs of the world. Do they stack up in this game against Georgia? This is the ultimate litmus test, I believe, for everything we thought was true about Ole Miss going into the season. Now, for Georgia, man, I can't figure them out. Not that I can't figure them out. Like, I can't figure out where they're at because I think we all know Georgia's a really freaking good team. I've said it now a couple of times, both on my social channels and on this very platform, on the On3 YouTube channel. I've said I think they have a championship-level roster. Well, Carson Beck and the interceptions, yeah, Carson Beck threw a couple picks. We'll talk about it. But Carson Beck also going into the year played well enough a season ago to get Georgia to the SEC championship game and to make, I think, everybody and their mother believe going into this season he was the number one quarterback potentially coming off the board in the NFL draft. Now, I don't think that's still going to be the case, but I'm just saying now, it's not like we haven't seen Carson Beck deliver. He has. We're just not seeing it to the same degree that we would hope for at this point in the season. So going back to what I was saying, Georgia's roster isn't the concern. The concern for me is like, well, when do we see like Monstar Georgia come out? Because we see it against Texas, and that's awesome. I love to see it again in the big spots, and you're on the road and everyone's doubting you, whatever. But, like, what about when you play the Floridas and the Auburns and Mississippi States of the world? Like, why don't you just go Jason Kelsey to Heckler's iPhone then? Where's that at? Does it show up in this spot? Because I think for this game now, Georgia, yeah, they're favored, and yeah, they beat the brakes off Ole Miss a season ago, but you are going on the road, and this is a team now in Ole Miss that I have to believe should have the attention of Georgia, and if they don't, this game will get very, very interesting, and we'll find out quick, fast, and in a hurry. So we just mentioned it. And it's going to be the talking point all week long for anyone with a microphone or writes a column, whatever. Carson Beck, man, what's up with the interceptions? Hey, can Carson Beck avoid turning the football over so they can beat Ole Miss? Fair question, and I don't think that it's the wrong question to ask, but I do think there's more to that discussion to be had. Because I think we see Carson Beck throw a pick and we say, what is he doing? Bonehead move. Yeah, but Kirby Smart also says in his press conference, like, Carson Beck, all but like 3 or 4 times, is making the right decision with the football. Now, the unfortunate part is those 3 times, it ends up being an interception. So it is what it is. Ole Miss now has a top 2 sack rate in college football. What does that mean? More than likely, they're going to try to get after Carson Beck. So that's kind of, I think, the question I want to ask in relation to Carson Beck's interceptions. Those 3 picks he threw against Florida, all 3 of those had a little bit of pressure. Some more than others, but it sped up the shot clock for him a little bit. Now, he still got greedy, still tried to make a throw he probably shouldn't try to make. Aaron Murray had a great breakdown on his channel, just saying essentially Carson Beck needs to take what the defense gives him. But does speeding up the shot clock on Carson Beck, like Florida did, does Ole Miss have success doing that and maybe get themselves a couple of extra possessions? Because we'll say this now, you cannot give Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin at their place some extra bullets and expect to win the football game. It worked against Texas, and I think that was a massive anomaly because of how well your defensive line played. If Carson Beck throws 3 picks against Ole Miss, I don't think Georgia wins this football game. Now, I also don't know that he throws 3 picks, so we'll leave it at that. The question I think in relation to all this that I also want to ask is, can we call the offense in a certain way to help Carson Beck cut down on those poor decisions? Now, this is not me telling you that I should be the OC at Georgia. Mike Bobo knows what he's doing over there, all right? But I do think it's fair to maybe at least start the conversation of like, hey, can we just have the more like residential / backroads version of this offense? Not saying you minimize it, not saying you dumb it down or anything like that. But what I am saying is whenever there is potential for some mistakes, what do? You cut out the stuff that was causing those mistakes. I'm not saying you cut out plays to play, but maybe we just call a little bit more of a conservative style of offense, because as good as Ole Miss is, I think that Georgia's roster is still better. I still think that Georgia has better players. I don't think one portal cycle is enough to just fix the gap that was there from a talent level between Ole Miss and Georgia. So that goes back to the question. Can you just keep from making those big mistakes? And can you help him as a play caller have just a more minimized, what's the right way to say this? Have a more cut down level of options here to where when he feels pressure, the throw is the check down. The throw isn't the over the middle dig route or whatever it ends up looking like. Again, you can't spot Ole Miss points. Now, for Ole Miss and the way that they score points now, it's not just them being able to run the football that I think would scare you if you're Kirby Smart in that defense. What scares you is what they can do off of running the football. Because we talk a lot about, Jackson Dart, and then they hung 60 on Arkansas, and a lot of that was because they threw the football at like a ridiculous level and threw for over 500 yards. But Ole Miss is a setup kind of team. Like what they'll do here is in their RPO offense, to just try and give you a quick inside football look here, the RPO system is for the most part, a pre-snap look as to how many defenders the defense has in the box to stop the run. If you don't have enough defenders in that box, well, then we like our guys to go block how many guys you have. Again, we have more blockers than you have defenders, so we should have success running the football. Can Georgia consistently give the proper box count and be able to stop Ole Miss running the football? Because if you stop them from running the football, you feel a lot better about your chances to minimize explosive plays. That is how Ole Miss will just absolutely just euthanize you. That is where they get after you. They are averaging 11 yards a pass, also second best in college football. So for Georgia now, I think Kirby Smart said it best. He's like, you can't make it about scheme with Ole Miss. Because if it comes down to scheme now, they got a quarterback that's super experienced, super dialed in, knows where to go with the football, knows where to go with when things get a little bit hairy. Like, he makes good decisions more often than not. If you make it about scheme, they like their scheme. That plays into Ole Miss's hands. And Kirby Smart loves to say this. It's about blocking. It's about tackling. Can Georgia block and tackle? Because here's the deal. You can run jet sweep and have the numbers you want, but it doesn't matter if you have the numbers you want if our defenders meet your blocks with destruction of 1,000 killer bees, and then we got problems, and then we're getting home making the tackle for a loss. You got 3rd and 13. Advantage Georgia. Now, if they can't do that, again, going back to the championship edge, if Georgia rolls out there like they did in that first half against Florida and in that first half against Auburn or in that first half against Mississippi State or finishes the game the way they did against Mississippi State, there's going to be some problems. There's going to be some problems because we've seen now at different points now, speaking to what Ole Miss does effectively, the explosive plays, Georgia hasn't been all that awesome against the explosive play this year. DJ Lagway got him for one. I understand there wasn't the starting defense for Georgia in the game because of some guys that missed the first half. I get it. Still, that happened. Mississippi State goes for over 300 yards through the air against you. The Alabama game is what it is. But I'm just saying now, if Georgia cannot stop the run and does not meet this game with the proper physical edge, Ole Miss is going to make this thing very, very uncomfortable. Now, I do think college football has been a headache all year long to try and get a read on, in large part because of the portal, in large part because of the conference realignment. And what I mean by that is, like, we all were saying how good Ohio State was early in the year, right? And how bad Oregon was. They play, Oregon beats them. And then we're talking about Texas being the most complete team in college football. Georgia's been a little bit lackluster, like they played Kentucky to a 1-point game. And then Georgia goes into Austin and beats them by 2 scores. So some of that's the madness of college football. Some of that is, I think, very much so the madness of what 2024 college football is. And so with that being the case and how poorly Georgia looked against Florida, I think Kirby Smart, throughout the week of practice, has had a little bit more of the locker room's ear than maybe he would even usually have, which I have to believe is a lot. In picking this game, I don't think Georgia is as dominant as they were a season ago, but I am going with the more consistent variable here. And the consistent variable to me is Kirby Smart in the month of November. Georgia has not lost a game in November since 2020, which was the COVID year, when they lost to Florida. So bottom line here, when circumstances are quote-unquote normal, Georgia's usually going to be a force when it comes time to play their best football. So I think Georgia gets dialed in. I think that the Florida game, you would hope if you're a Georgia fan, is kind of a like, hey, wake-up call. I think Georgia wins. I think it's relatively high scoring. I'll take Georgia 34, Ole Miss 28. So we're still taking Georgia to win and cover, but I don't think it is just a total blowout like it was in Athens a season ago. All right, now speaking of points, man, Colorado at Texas Tech. Colorado's favored by 3.5 points. The over is 62.5, or over under, I should say. Showing our cards there. We love the over. We absolutely love the over in this game. 4 Eastern, Fox's Big Noon. I'm assuming Joel Klatt's calling this game with Gus Johnson, which is phenomenal. Going to Lubbock. Going to Lubbock. Now, I'll say this. For Colorado now, this will be the toughest environment they have played in this point in the year since they played at Nebraska. All right, Lubbock will be on fire. Texas Tech, the vibes are immaculate after beating an undefeated Iowa State team. Look at the Big 12, though, man. Just look at how awesome this is. We're in the month of November. We have no idea who the team is going to be out of that conference to represent that conference in the college football playoff. The Pac-12 and all the chaos that it had, it walked so the Big 12 could run right now, man. Because Colorado, their college football playoff hopes, still very much so intact. Need some help? Sure. Sure, you need some help. But with the way this conference has gone, I don't think it should surprise anybody if they do get that help. More on Colorado in a second. Texas Tech, emotional win. We already spoke to that. They need some help too. But if they handle business, if they win out, if it comes to a situation where they got to get a tiebreaker with Iowa State, they hold that tiebreaker. I'm just saying, all right? So the Fighting Joey Maguires, vibes are great, and I expect the vibes to be turned up quite a bit with Colorado coming to town. So I want to break this game down in a second, but I want to make sure we say this before we jump into it. With all the talk around the playoff for Colorado, that's obviously fun. That fan base wants that. Deion Sanders wants that. Extremely well warranted. However, I want to make sure we all get aligned on this. Even if Colorado doesn't make the college football playoff, this year is a success for Deion Sanders. It is. Because when he got that roster and obviously made some major moves within that roster via the portal, it was a one-win operation. They are now in the month of November talking about making the college football playoff and competing for a Big 12 title. That is a success. Now, I expect Colorado to go on and finish with more wins than what they have right now, but even if they were to not win another game, this year is a success for Deion Sanders in Colorado. Hear me loud and clear, all right? So as I mentioned, we love the over. Absolutely love the over. I mean, it's 62.5 points. Go ahead and hammer that. Both teams want to throw it around the yard. They're both throwing it right around 60% of the time. They're both scoring over 30. Zach Kittley, Texas Tech's offensive coordinator, kind of an air raid disciple of sorts. Very similar in terms of style as what Colorado wants to do. They want to isolate matchups. They want to push the ball vertical. They want to take shots. All right, that is what they want to do. Now, this style of game is going to be a lot of fun because it's kind of going to be like a college football 25 video game sort of format. And what I mean by that is whenever you and your buddy are going back and forth on that game, we understand now, like, as great as they have made the defensive controls now in that football game, it's about scoring. And let's be real here, you're probably both going to score quite a bit. So what comes down to determining those games when you're playing the video game? It comes down to who can turn it over, right? Who gets the ball last, and who can slow down the tempo of the game. It's worth noting now, if you're talking about slowing down the tempo, both these teams actually have something to offer in the running game. Taj Brooks, Texas Tech's running back, already over 1,000 yards on the year. I think is one of the best running backs in college football that does not get talked about. Colorado continues to progress towards more balance. Augusta has been a physical presence for them, especially down near the goal line. He has offered exactly what Colorado needs to be able to maximize what they have on the perimeter. Because we know what Colorado has on the perimeter, I think, is as good as anything else in college football, especially with Shedeur Sanders, wheeling and dealing. In regards to the Travis Hunter Heisman conversation, we talk a lot about stages and Colorado needs to win and all this. Like, this might be that massive stage that helps add some more fuel to that fire. I don't know if you win the Heisman in early November, but I do think that it wouldn't hurt things with Big Noon there, with Colorado in the playoff race. If they could win and Travis Hunter could have a big day, I think that would probably only bolster his odds, at least, with how many eyeballs I believe are going to be on this game. So I think the spot is really interesting when you talk about this for both teams. Because Texas Tech, before the season, we do our win-loss deal we like to do on the social media platforms. We give you our essentially our schedule breakdown game by game in 60 seconds for each team. Preseason, I saw Colorado go into Lubbock. At that point in time, we didn't know what we know now about Colorado, and I was like, I don't know if I love that one, man. I think Texas Tech is sneaky. I think Colorado's still developing. Like I think Colorado drops that game. However, Texas Tech is coming off of a crazy, emotionally draining win over Iowa State. This is a big stage for Texas Tech. For Colorado, it's a big stage for sure, but like this isn't to put it too simplistically, but like with Deion Sanders as your head coach and just with the coverage that Colorado has around them because they're fascinating, like every game is a big stage for them, you know? Whether people are rooting for them to win or rooting for them to lose, like everyone is watching Colorado regardless of who they're playing. And so I think in that way, I think Colorado actually is more built for this moment. The prize pick square we love in this game, Travis Hunter, 98.5 receiving yards. He's been a walking 100-yard game when he's healthy. We'll go ahead and take the more there. The concern for me here actually lies on the defensive side of the football for Texas Tech. Because I think Morton can sling it around. I think they can actually potentially go score for score here with Colorado. But I worry if it comes down to a shootout like I expect it to, Texas Tech's allowing 8 yards a pass. Y'all, that plays just, perfectly into what Colorado does as a football team and as offense. They're allowing 284 yards a game through the air. That's good for 124th in college football. You look at the defensive side for Colorado, the narrative coming into the year was, well, hey, they're not really too much to write home about, right? Like they don't have much to stop the run. They're not going to probably get after you when it comes to rushing the passer. Actually, Colorado is the team in this game that's going to rush the passer. Texas Tech has a sack rate of 3%, 122nd in college football. Colorado is allowing 21 points a game, which is vastly improved from a year ago where they were allowing, I believe, north of 30. Top 15 sack rate in the country. All right? So with that being said, I think that Colorado has the pieces to outscore Texas Tech. The style of this game is different than what we've seen previously for Colorado, because previously they're going back and forth, and it's okay, can Colorado force the opposition to have to score with them? Texas Tech is going to score. But again, I think the defense for Tech concerns me too much. I worry about the spot for them with the emotional drainage from a week ago. I think Colorado wins the football game. We love the over. We'll take 42-31 Buffs. And Deion Sanders and company get another road win. They've seemed to play well on the road, get a win in a hostile environment, and continue to press on towards potentially now making the Big 12 title, and at that point in time being 4 15-minute quarters away from punching a ticket to the college football playoff. Here we go. Here we freaking go, man. And that's why we love college football. And I will say this. I have still been against the 12-team playoff. Like, as the years progressed, I've still been like, okay, well, I would still prefer my 4-team playoff. If you want to disagree about that, another conversation for another time. But I will also say this. The 12-team playoff, when we get there, as we, launch into those games and get those matchups, that's going to be awesome. And especially for a conference like the Big 12, if that's the conference that you follow most closely, that's going to be incredible. That is going to be absolutely incredible. So excited to see what those rankings look like tonight. And if you're listening on podcast, they came out last night, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed. So we got some more predictions for you here in a second. I want to touch on Miami at Georgia Tech. I also want to give you my pick in South Carolina at Vanderbilt, which is the People's top 25 matchup. Hey, people does what they want. The People, that's our top 25 matchup. But I want to touch on this before we roll on. USC is making a quarterback change. Miller Moss is being benched for Jade Mayava. Now, Jade Mayava is the transfer from UNLV. At one point in time, I believe he was committed to Georgia, ends up flipping during the transfer portal process and goes to USC. And so you're like, okay, hey, Lincoln Riley getting the quarterback. What else is new? Took one from Georgia. Good for USC. If you're a USC fan, the year in itself has been disappointing because the assumption going into the year was, well, hey, if the defense can be improved, quarterback with Lincoln Riley is not usually something we're worrying about. Also, we saw the bowl game against Louisville. Miller Moss was just playing darts back there. Looked awesome. Great. We're going to roll this year. We're going to shock a lot of people. Let's get after it. Now, with you making the quarterback change, the concern is, well, okay, the defense is actually improved, and the thing that we have always been so confident in, the constant for us as USC fans, is Lincoln Riley having a quarterback, is the offense. And so for them to feel a certain way internally and for it to look a certain way on the field right now, bad enough for us to make a change, oh boy, that's not good. Because, again, the thing we leaned on so heavily seems to be falling out from underneath us. While I think that's fair to have that concern, and I don't think it's irresponsible to say that there is a quarterback change warranted at USC, I can't help but ask that next question of, well, is that the fix? Are we sure it's just quarterback play? Because you look at USC in the games that, quite frankly, they should have won. They've been up in a number of these games now, and they have not had the killer instinct to finish. And so you try not to be, overly intense with your assessment the first year transitioning to the Big Ten, because the Big Ten now we knew it would be a bit of a change for USC in terms of the style of ball they play. Like, they had to match up on the line of scrimmage quick, fast, in a hurry. They've done a better job this year than they'd done previously. If Caleb Williams is playing quarterback for you, maybe we talk about USC in a very different way. But again, the overall ability to finish teams when you have them dead to rights, and it's not just once or twice, it's like 3 or 4 times now. Like the Penn State game, the Michigan game, are the two that probably stick out most vividly in your mind if you're a USC fan. That, to me, isn't just a quarterback thing. Like, does quarterback play a part in that? Sure. But to me, those are things that are a little bit more deeply seated within USC football. So I'm not sitting here telling you I know the answer. This news came out this morning. But regardless of if Miller Moss is playing quarterback for you next week or not, the issues with USC, I think, are a little bit more intense. And I want to be careful how I speak about this because, again, I'm not in that building. I don't know all the ins and outs of how USC is rolling. But I have spoken to some people that are pretty close to that operation and how they felt about how USC was operating last year. And I think there is a certain level of discontentment from the outside looking in as to how USC is choosing to maybe view what being a USC Trojan is. I think there's a certain level of pride that brand demands. I think there's a certain level of pride that school demands. And I don't know. Again, I'm not telling you I know for a fact, yes or no. I'm saying I don't know if that standard of what it means to be a USC Trojan is being met with how they go about their business. So I think the beautiful part about college football is what happens between those white lines will always tell the truth. We're going to see how USC responds to this quarterback change. We're going to see how they respond to Lincoln Riley and the staff. I'm excited to see it because I think Lincoln Riley is a really good football coach. Contrary to what the internet would tell you to believe, Lincoln Riley can coach some football. The question for me is, what is the overall DNA right now of USC Trojan football? Because right now, based on not just quarterback play, but across the board, it's not where it needs to be to get to where they want to go and to get to what they expect to get done. USC is not out here playing for Holiday Bowls. I love the Holiday Bowl, but that's not what they're competing for. They expect to compete for conference titles, college football playoff berths, and then beyond that, national titles. Hasn't happened in a minute, but that is the standard. Don't get it twisted. Just because they're on the West Coast, man, I'm just telling you, there's not like some lower bar because of a different time zone and the beach is a little bit closer. Not the case. Not the case at all. Excited to see how they respond. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Speaking of the beach, let's go out to South Beach. Well, I guess not South Beach, but the school in South Beach, Miami. Miami going to Georgia Tech, noon Eastern, ESPN, Bobby Dodd Stadium. Miami, 11.5-point favorite. Miami has been rolling is the word you would use because of what their record says. Miami has been undefeated and still not played a full four-quarter football game since the game against Florida. Now, I want to make sure I say this too. I've had a lot of good folks from Coral Gables get in my Twitter mentions, and we appreciate that and always encourage that. But there's, surprisingly to me, this narrative started to develop of, well, hey, this guy doesn't like Miami. Doesn't like Miami because he doesn't like the fact they're not playing four-quarter games. No. I was actually the one, before the season started, telling you Miami's going to win the ACC. They're only going to lose one game, and Cam Ward's going to have a historic season. So far, we're 2 for 3. Haven't lost a game, so we'll wear that one. But I'm just telling you, Miami, the reason why I get frustrated with them is because of the potential I see within them, because of the way that roster's built, because of who they have at quarterback. Like, Miami is just call a spade here. They're a lot better than 11.5 points against Georgia Tech. The reason why I believe that spread is what it is because Miami has made some folks nervous playing Duke as close as they do in the first half, having to have a superhuman comeback against Cal on the road, and the game against Vatech. Like, Miami is yet to play to their roster talent. So the frustrating thing there, if you're a Miami Hurricane fan, is like, gosh dang, can't we just have it be a situation where we're feeling good in the fourth quarter and we're not even having to worry about a comeback? Fair. But I think the excitement is, okay, we haven't played to our roster talent yet, and our best football is ahead of us. And our most meaningful football game with the ACC title and the college football playoff still ahead of us? Okay, we'll see where this goes. Now, for Georgia Tech, man, I have no idea who's playing quarterback. We are live right now right around 11 a.m. Central on a Tuesday. So if this changes after we get off the air, there we go. But again, Haynes King, a little bit dinged up. Zach Pyron was benched in their most previous game. But I will say this. All the script is reading heavily towards Miami. It's a noon kick, sleepy noon kick, Miami on the road, Georgia Tech's not that good. Who's playing quarterback? I don't know. Miami hasn't played 4 quarters in a minute, and the way that college football has been just bonkers this year, everything's on the table. I'll just say that. Everything is on the table. So even with me saying that, this game is all about Miami. And when we break these games down, we talk about matchups and areas of opportunity. And as I was getting ready for this, I was like, everything favors Miami. Everything. Like, not just the injury report, because we don't know where Jamal Haynes is at. We don't know where Haynes King is at. Obviously, 2 crucial pieces, star running back and quarterback, respectively, for Georgia Tech. Momentum favors Miami. Roster favors Miami. Miami has more to play for, even if Haynes King is healthy for Georgia Tech. I hate to say it if you're a Georgia Tech fan, but like this is the reality. There's a difference maker at Miami at quarterback. It's the difference. So what I want to see if I'm a Hurricane fan, like what I already said in this segment, what I said in this prediction, I want to see Cam Ward with a towel around his neck, a headset on, and a clipboard in the fourth quarter. because Miami is doing what they're supposed to do, playing to their roster talent and blowing the doors off Georgia Tech. That's what I want to see. Why? Because you are fully capable. There is no matchup that I look at and say, oh man, maybe Georgia Tech can get that one. The only way Georgia Tech wins this football game, speaking to the upset, is if Miami decides to roll out there and play 2 quarters. And even if that happens, Miami, I think, has a more than decent chance to win a football game if they play 2.5 quarters well against Georgia Tech, with them being dinged up. So, to at least give this the proper breakdown it deserves, for Georgia Tech, they need to have some way to generate something in the quarterback run game. Why? Because when the quarterback runs the football, as we've seen this offense do at different points throughout the year, it allows you an extra blocker at best in a quarterback power situation for your running back to lead block and what have you. It also keeps that defense off balance a little bit. I mean, in some cases, you'll have some pre-snap movement and have those eyes rocking back and forth and they're off balance. In other situations, you're just a straight read option and the defense has to hesitate for a second to figure out where that football is going. That's got to be the way that you live your Georgia Tech. Because I think if you're able to run the football with the quarterback, you're probably also generating something in that running back room on the ground. And if that happens, now, a lot of ifs, a lot of hypotheticals, but this is how the upset would happen, you would shorten the game. And the best defense here for Georgia Tech is Cam Ward watching, keeping him off the field. That's how you would give yourself the best chance to win this ball game. Now, speaking of that Miami letdown, this is a storyline that might fly a little bit under the radar. Curious to see. But remember these teams played last year? Remember that? Cam Ward wasn't playing for Miami, so maybe this isn't quite as personal for him. This was a game last year that Miami was on their way to winning. Supposed to take a knee. They don't take a knee. And then after that happens, everyone gets out the Twitter fingers and they just start firing off ignorant things. Mario Cristobal is not a good game day coach. Miami should fire Cristobal. What is Miami's never going to amount to anything? It's a clown show. And it's like, you understand now, if they take a knee, you don't get to say any of that. And fumbling the ball in general is kind of a freak play. So I think Miami's probably had this one circled a little bit because this game and the way that it went last year against Georgia Tech, I think Miami actually has a little bit of extra giddy up here. I know a lot of these pieces on this roster were not there for last year's game, but I think the staff will be all the way dialed in, and I think Miami will respond with a bit of a get back, if you will. That get back, you know what they say about it. They tell you very clearly what that get back is. So we'll take Miami to win, we'll take Miami to cover, and we will see Miami play as close to a 4-quarter game as we have seen since Florida, and I like the Canes to get it done on the road. Does it give me the heebie-jeebies a little bit? Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. But you know what? We're going to embrace it, and we're going to take Miami to win and to cover. Roll, party, roll, baby. Roll, party, roll. Again, make sure you are subscribed. Got one more prediction for you. But tonight, as soon as we get the big news, you know what I'm talking about, the big news, the college football playoff rankings, as soon as we have those, Nick Brake and I will be in studio. We'll cut a video for you ASAP. Andy and Ari will have their reaction live in real time. So bottom line, for all things going on tonight, college football playoff rankings, lock in here and make sure you're subscribed because we got a lot of content on deck for you. So let's hit on this here. This is the People's Top 25 matchup. South Carolina, minus 3.5 points at Vanderbilt. 4:15 Eastern, SEC Network. Vandy is ranked. South Carolina, for whatever reason, is not. I said it once, I'll say it again. This is the People's Top 25 matchup. This is the matchup that should be top 25. However, I guess we can't have nice things. It is what it is. For Vanderbilt, man, this is not your parents' Vanderbilt. All due respect to your parents. I'm sure they're wonderful people. This Vanderbilt team is not just like a different logo, because they did change their logo from what it used to be. But they beat Bama, and that's awesome, and the vibes are crazy, and you're throwing goalposts into the Cumberland, and like, awesome, cool. Psychopath move to walk it down Broadway. The goalpost, that is. More power to you. But it wasn't just like they beat Bama, and they were feeling a little bit frisky that day and got it done. Like, we haven't seen the major Vanderbilt letdown since that game. So what I'm trying to tell you is Vanderbilt is for real. They're for real. Like, what they did to Bama, that was real. They played Texas very close. A lot of people would say they maybe play here, play there. They beat Texas. I don't disagree with you. Came down to an onside kick. We haven't seen Vanderbilt have some sort of implosion. Just haven't seen it. Saw them beat Auburn last week. At Auburn now, by the way. Auburn is what they are, but like Jordan-Hare is not an easy place to play. And so where I arrive at with Vanderbilt is I think Diego Pavia, the quarterback for them, transferring in, I think he is to Vandy what Curt Cignetti is to Indiana. And what I mean by that is Curt Cignetti with the Hoosiers, man, he is just like borderline arrogant. Ton of self-confidence, ton of belief, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, Diego Pavia isn't quite as outspoken, but just the way that he plays the game, the fire, the emotion, like he has no reason to have that emotion and have that level of confidence that he has internally, on paper at least, right? Transfer from New Mexico State. Just get into the SEC. You're not supposed to be balling like you're balling at Vanderbilt, but he is. And I think that belief and that emotion that he brings to the table, with it being at such a high level and that overflowing onto his teammates, I think that helps flip the script of what old Vandy used to be. Same way Curt Cignetti's flipped the script on what old Indiana used to be. Now, do not get it twisted. The portal pieces they have acquired out there in Vanderbilt are a massive addition, so make sure that's clear. But Vanderbilt is a different Vanderbilt team, different swagger. Diego Pavia, a massive reason why. The door's a real deal. Now, South Carolina, here's the deal for them. Can they reset after a crazy emotional win? Because here's the deal, man. A lot of teams have had crazy emotional wins, then roll into Nashville, Tennessee, and they struggle. Because they see Vandy on the schedule. They say, oh, nice, we got Vandy. Let's get right. Let's get healthy. Let's enjoy ourselves this week. Good week of practice. Enjoy the win that we just had. Get another dub. Doesn't work that way. Ask Alabama after they played Georgia. Ask Texas after they played Georgia and it took them to again, an onside kick. Can South Carolina have the ability to reset after a massive signature kind of win for Shane Beamer against A&M? Because I think as much as, the Vanderbilt operation is improved from what they were, I still think South Carolina has better players. Now, is that the difference in this game? We'll see. Vanderbilt, speaking to the talent gap that may or may not be there, they are like a souped-up academy team. And when I speak to the academies, love the academies. I love the option. The option football is actually what I did in high school. It's phenomenal. The reason why I love the option, and now don't get it twisted, the option is different at Vanderbilt than it would be at an Army or a Navy or an Air Force. They're a little bit more out of gun. Another conversation for another time. But it's still option football. The reason why I love option football, the reason why it's beautiful, it rewards discipline. It rewards grit. If you want to beat Vanderbilt, you have to play for the duration of 4 quarters assignment sound football. Because all it takes is one missed assignment. We're out the back door. We got a counter going one way. We got a pitch on the perimeter, whatever it looks like. We're busting it for 60 yards. That could be how Vanderbilt lives. That's how Vanderbilt hurts you. Another reason why I love the option, it's consistent. All you got to do, my head coach used to say this, Coach Peterson, over there at Air Force, or came from Air Force, now coaching football in the state of Tennessee, says all we need is 3 yards. 3 yards for us is a positive play. First, second, third down, 3.3 yards to carry. Hey, we got at least 4th inches. At best, the first down. So I think the early discipline for South Carolina is going to be crucial. The reason why I specify early discipline is because if you can get a few stops, I do think that South Carolina's offense is going to be able to generate something. More on that in a second. But if you can score points against Vandy and force them to chase, like as good as Diego Pavia is, this team is not built to throw the football. I love Elijah Stowers. I love Diego Pavia. I love everything they're doing offensively, but they are 39% of the time throwing the football. What does that tell us? They don't want to throw the ball. They can't. They're not built to. It's not their bag. They'll hit you on some explosives. They're, I believe, top 25 in America in yards per pass, so they set up the pass game, but they're not trying to go drive for drive with you here. So for South Carolina on that defensive line, if you can play disciplined football and not allow those 3.3 yards of carry, you're going to be in good shape. Now within that conversation, a massive variable in that is Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard. Those dudes are freak shows. Those dudes are Sunday players. Dylan Stewart's only a true freshman. Golly, I mean, it's just wild to think about. In this situation, if I'm Vanderbilt, I have to imagine they're looking at what they did against A&M. They're saying, we're not going to block those guys. We're crazy. We can try to go block Dylan Stewart. For what? We're going to read him. What do I mean by that? They're going to, in the option, force him to decide, do I want to try and tackle the dive or do I want to come after Diego Pavia? So Diego Pavia, one, has to make good decisions. But I think a question I have within that, every so often you get some freak show edge defenders like a Dylan Stewart. And those defenders are so annoying to play against because they're rule breakers in the sense that when you read a defender, you're supposed to be able to eliminate him with the correct read. Now, Dylan Stewart's so freakishly athletic, we've seen now multiple times, he might be good enough to play both. Not every time, but enough times to where if you get behind the sticks in the option game, that's not a good way to live, and that is advantage to the defense every single time. So the athleticism of a Dylan Stewart, of a Kyle Kennard, yeah, you're going to try and read them, but what's your success level in reading them? That's going to have a major, major impact on this game. So going back to the South Carolina offense, I love Vanderbilt, but their personnel doesn't give you more concern than Texas A&M does it? You don't have, just a number of, Torian York is not lining up for Vanderbilt, right? It just kind of is what it is. Now, the personnel is good, but the reason why Vanderbilt has had some success on the defensive side, look at the time of possession for Vanderbilt. They are top 15 in America. They extend drives, they make your offense watch, and then they make you have to play catch-up if you don't maximize your possessions. That's the key here. For South Carolina, you got to maximize possessions. Vanderbilt is allowing 4 yards a carry. They're almost allowing 6 yards a play. So there's money on the ground if you want to pick it up. But you got to be willing, I think, to go north and south, not get greedy, not look for the explosive too early. If it's there, awesome. But I think this is Lenora Sellers left, Raka Sanders right, north and south. We're not trying to reinvent the playbook, reinvent the wheel. We are trying to be more physical than you. And if we do that, we should have success. But that's how it is on paper. Is that how it is in practice? And I think going back to just the weird way college football has rolled this year, Vanderbilt could win this football game. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. Vanderbilt could win this football game because of what they have on that roster now, with them upping the level of talent, with what they have internally. I spoke to the belief. I spoke to the confidence. I still think what it would require is South Carolina living a little bit in the previous moment that was the win over A&M. Because Willie B's on fire. It looks like something out of a movie. People are taking the hedges home with them, or they're picking the bushes apart. And let the kids have fun. Let them do it. I mean, who really is too concerned about that? It is what it is. But I still think that South Carolina, not being ranked, still something to prove. Let some games get away from them. I think they're still actually a little bit hungry. I think there's still some chase mode mentality from them. I think Shane Beamer is going to get them ready to play. Now, I do not think it is a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. I think that spread is probably close to what we think this game looks like. I'm going to go ahead and take South Carolina to get it done. I think they'll cover by half a point. I'll take South Carolina 27, Vanderbilt 23. So by that logic, South Carolina wins, South Carolina covers. But I think Vanderbilt gives them all they can handle. I think we walk away saying, yep, Vandy's for real. And I think we also walk away saying, hey, that's a mature South Carolina football team. Lenora Sellers is going to be real good for a long time, if we didn't already believe that. So that's our take there on what should be now the People's Top 25 matchup. But on the People's College Football Show, we will unpack it as such. All right, so tonight, college football playoff rankings. I want y'all to make sure you're following on the social platforms, Instagram, Twitter, at J.D. Pickell. Yes, makes me feel good, 100% true. But more importantly, great way for us to involve y'all in the show. We will still have Hotel Playoff tomorrow, but new to the Wednesday format, we're going to do college football playoff hypotheticals. What does that mean? It means I'm putting out the tweet after we get off the air here. I'm going to say, hey, hit me with your college football playoff hypothetical. And maybe it could be, hey, could we get 2 ACC teams in? Or could it be the SEC only gets 3 teams? Whatever it looks like. It doesn't have to be conference specific. Just came to my mind. Hit me with your playoff hypotheticals on that platform. We're going to answer some of them on tomorrow's show. Okay, so get at me there. Again, on Twitter, at JD Pickell. If you call it X, then on X, at JD Pickell. Week 11, man. We're here. We're here. Predictions are out there. May have some more of those for you as well over the course of the week. But this is a beautiful thing. Again, playoff rankings out tonight. Glad to have you all a part of this, man, making this show what it is. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick Brake on the 1s and 2s. For myself, JD Pickell, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.